This week, I'm excited to spend some time thinking with you about alternatives in negotiation. Alternatives are very important to the negotiation process, which is why many negotiation scholars have spent a lot of ink and a lot of paper focusing on this aspect of negotiation. Now, usually, that conversation is in the context of what's called a negotiator's BATNA, or their best alternative to a negotiated agreement. The advice is this, and it's very sound advice. The stronger your alternatives, the more leverage you have as a negotiator at the table. The better options that you can create, the less you need the deal. And as a result, you can be a bit more aggressive. Very, very good advice in the context of especially a competitive negotiation. But here's something that often happens that I want to make sure you're keenly aware of. Many times people become unrealistic, or they inflate to an area to where it is not even real in terms of what their alternatives are. And so it's important that as negotiators, we be very realistic about our alternatives. Now, recently I was involved in a negotiation trying to acquire a real estate development. There were several different properties as part of this development, and they had been investigated and due diligence had been conducted, and we had a pretty good idea as to what the market value of those properties were. Let's say in this case it was about $500,000 each. Well, what happened was, as we got farther along in the negotiation, the seller decided that they could perhaps get more. And so in the context of our negotiation, they inflated the price almost $250,000 each on these particular properties. And so now, instead of talking about market value, we were talking about market value plus $250,000 on each property. As you can imagine, my interest went away immediately. Now, since then, what's happened is that these developers, their eyes got a little big. They got a little bit ambitious. They ended up developing the properties and thinking they could easily sell them at that inflated price. Well, that thinking turned out to be false. And as a result of that, they have been sitting on these properties, and the price has been coming down and down and down and down. And as you can imagine, they've been calling me, trying to see where my interest is, and frankly, I don't have a lot of interest except at market value. Here's a case where literally a deal got blown up because there was this inflated view of an alternative. So, as you think about managing this process, it's really important that we think about what will happen, what is most likely to happen if we are not able to reach an agreement. In this particular case, it's not real to think that the developer can take a $500,000 asset and just turn around and sell it for $750,000. Now, I know that would be great for the developer, but it's not realistic, and that's beginning to bear itself out in this particular deal. And so, if we're going to carefully construct a bottom line that will be better than our alternative, we need to make sure that we're real in terms of what will likely happen if we are unable to reach an agreement. Now, once we have that clarified, now we're in a position to plan our strategy. A strategy that will hopefully lead us to someplace much better than our bottom line, but in the worst case scenario, to a place that is better than our alternative. If not, we should just pursue the alternative. And so as you think about alternatives, do everything you can to improve upon them, but also be very realistic about them. And that will position you to set up an excellent strategy in your next negotiation.